Well, why don't we go ahead and we'll kick things off. Before we get started, though, we wanted to start with an opening prayer. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I will turn it over to Aliana to get us started with an opening prayer. Thanks.
Hello. So just a little explanation of why we like to pray. The stories that we tell can be very heavy, not only to hear, but to also express and to just to show how important they are. So yeah, we pray not only to protect ourselves, but to acknowledge the ones that came before us and to give respect to them as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray in my Cheyenne language, and then I'll offer um, a short translation afterwards. Na maheo, mahayan, na histot the know what se, na moat David, moat David, eto, nifstane wo, nit da meo hot na dovtist, haho nihists, te if so meo do what, if so meo do what nit do, te veo semit do, te vista mito, nivsh, nin shivat damimenon, histaneo, hena hane. Okay, so what I mentioned at the beginning was I was calling upon our creator Mahayot and our four directions Mahayan, and I acknowledged not only my ancestor Braided Locks, but also Black Kettle, who was there at Sand Creek. And I basically just said, I pray to you this morning. Thank you for waking me and getting me up this morning, for being with me, for helping me. Have pity on us and have pity on our people. Let it be so.
Thank you. That was beautiful and helps us get into the right mindset, I think, as we think about the rest of this program. So I am going to jump into the rest of the programming. My name is Kirsten Leong. I guess I should have introduced myself first, but I'm an Amache descendant and the vice president of the Amache Alliance, which is a nonprofit friends group that works with Amache National Historic Site, one of the newest national park sites and one of the 10 main Japanese incarceration sites during World War II. And so today I'm joined by the members of the first cohort of Amache and Sand Creek Massacre youth ambassadors, who will be sharing with you their experiences over the past almost 2 years with the Youth Ambassador Program. And so just to make sure that we all have some common background, I'm going to share a few orienting slides, and then I'll turn it over to Mariko Rooks, one of the educators with the Youth Ambassador Program, who will introduce and moderate the panel discussion, and then we'll make sure to leave time for discussion and audience Q&A. So like, I start the slides. And this actually, some of you might recognize that image on the slide is from the repatriation area at Sand Creek Massacre National Historic Site, where things that Aliana was talking about took place. And there are strings of origami cranes that were offered there during the Amache Pilgrimage Weekend. So that was something that the youth ambassadors put together as part of the program. But just for some orientation for everybody, this map shows the location of all the sites that are associated with the Japanese American World War II incarceration. And the triangles are the sites that are kind of the ones that are the 10 main sites that people are most familiar with. So the blue circle shows where Amache is. Its official name is Grenada Relocation Center in the southeastern Colorado. So it's quite far from the exclusion zone on the West Coast. And then it's also centrally located in the middle of the country, where people might be less familiar with the incarceration story than on the West Coast. And so Amache shares a lot of similarities to many of the other of the main sites people know about, like Manzanar, Tule Lake, Heart Mountain, and Topaz. But unlike those other sites, Amache was the only one that was in a state where the governor actually welcomed the Japanese Americans. And it was also less than 2 miles from the nearest town of Grenada, which was actually why there are two names for Amache Grenada, because the mail was getting mixed up between the town and the camp. And so, for various reasons, it was named after a prominent Cheyenne leader whose family was killed at Sand Creek Massacre, which you'll be hearing about in a little bit. And so, this proximity to the town led to a slightly different dynamic with the local community than at some of the other sites, where the nearest town may have been a 20-minute drive, not a two-mile walk. And in addition, Denver was one of the formal resettlement sites where the government incentivized people to move or stay after the incarceration sites closed. And so that really resulted in that permanent dispersal of the West Coast Japanese American community across the country and with a hub in the Denver area. So zooming in a little bit closer, this map shows the location of Amache relative to the site of Sand Creek Massacre, which is also another National Historic Site administered by the National Park Service. And the two sites are less than an hour drive from each other, and they're actually now managed under the same Park Service High Plains group. Although there hadn't been that much dialogue between the two sites in terms of management kinds of things before Amache became part of the National Park System, which actually the bill just passed in 2022, and it officially became designated, or all of the paperwork and everything was done in 2024. So in addition to the name of the site, the two sites share common origins on Cheyenne and Arapaho lands and also memorialize forced government displacements in the 1860s and in the 1940s, 80 years apart. And so then Aliana and Halcyon will give you a little bit more background on the Sand Creek Massacre for some orientation. They're the founders of the Sand Creek Massacre Youth Council. So let's see, I will turn it over to you.
So long before treaties or borders, before the 1850s, the Cheyenne and Arapaho called what is now Colorado home. Our ancestors, they moved up the land following the buffalo herds to follow and the changing seasons. We traveled in between the plains, the foothills, and the mountains, never staying too long in one place because we understood that earth needs time to rest. So
Oops.
in 1851, this is a little bit of a condensed road to Sand Creek, up to But in 1851, representatives from the United States government met with leaders from several tribes, including the Cheyenne. The treaty was supposed to bring peace among the tribes and between Native nations and settlers moving west along the Oregon and Santa Fe trails. For the Cheyenne and Arapaho people, this treaty was meant to recognize our lands, much of present-day Colorado, southern Wyoming, western Kansas, and Nebraska, but the U.S. government also used this treaty to divide the tribes in new fixed territories. And in 1861, the Fort Wise Treaty, a decade later, under pressure from gold rush settlers flooding into Colorado territory, U.S. officials pushed for a new agreement where only a handful of Cheyenne and Arapaho leaders, many of whom were not fully authorized by their full communities, were brought to Fort Wise in southeastern Colorado to sign. This treaty reduced our homelands to a small reservation along the Arkansas River, less than 1/13 of what had been recognized in 1851. It was a deliberate act of disposition where many Cheyenne and Arapaho peoples did not recognize or accept this treaty, calling it illegitimate and coerced. Those who resisted this were labeled as hostile by these officials. In spring 1864, and the U.S. Army had been ordered to locate and subdue any native camps considered a threat to settlers. Troops moved through what is now known as northeastern Colorado, including the Pawnee Grasslands region, searching for Cheyenne and Arapaho bands. And this leads us into May of 1864, near Smoky Hill in Kansas. Chief Lean Bear forward to greet approaching U.S. soldiers, showing them the peace medal and documents he had just received in Washington, D.C. Despite this, under orders from Colonel John Shivington's command, they had shot and killed him. And in June 11th of 1864, there was something known as the Hungate family killing, which was where a settler family living among a ranch near Denver, they were killed under unclear circumstances. Although it was never confirmed who exactly was responsible for this killing, territorial leaders and newspapers immediately had blamed the Cheyenne and the Arapaho people for this. And their deaths essentially became a political fuel for Governor John Evans and Colonel Chivington, who used this tragedy to rally settlers into a militia and justify a campaign of extermination and genocide of our peoples. Following these events, in mid-1864, just before the Sand Creek Massacre had occurred, Governor John Evans issued proclamations that encouraged violence against Native people. In one order, he authorized that all friendly natives to report to designated points of protection. Those who could or those who didn't were declared as hostile. And in August of 1864, Evans effectively sanctioned the killing of any Native person found outside of military supervision. He gave militias like Chivington's 3rd Colorado Cavalry free rein to attack those without proof distinction between peaceful and resisting violence. And this takes us into the 9th and the 30th, which is what is now known today as the Sand Creek Massacre.
So the photo that we see down below with all the people in it, that is September 28th at Camp Wild. That was our first and major reassurance that we would be okay at Sand Creek. Black Kettle had stated, "I came through fire to get here. I want peace. We are willing to surrender to Fort Lyon." But Governor John Evans said, "You're too late. You are out of war and now in the hands of the military. I cannot make peace with you. You have to make peace with them," referring to the military. And with all this talk of peace, once again, our traditional leaders, our chiefs, our Cheyenne and Arapaho chiefs thought we were okay at Sand Creek. And throughout everything else that was going on, we were just tired of fighting. So we wanted to surrender. And we took their word that we would be okay at Sand Creek. On the night of November 28th, 1864, young people were so happy that their family was finally at a place of peace. They danced nearly the whole night, playing games, and they were so happy and relieved that we would finally be safe at Sand Creek, unknowing what was going to happen the next morning. A couple of the older women woke up that following morning, and they thought they heard a herd of buffalo coming towards the camp. Unbeknownst to them, it was the force of 700 military men, Colorado's 3rd Cavalry. When Black Kettle saw it was soldiers, he raised the American flag and the white flag on a huge lodgepole from his teepee. As we all know, the white flag is the universal symbol of peace. But that didn't stop the butchery that began. Black Kettle called his people, and he said, "They won't fire. This is the symbol of peace. We are going to be okay." But shots began to ring out, and everybody scattered. White Antelope tried to show his peace medal that he was gifted from the United States president and that he went to Washington, D.C. for. He was gifted a peace medal to signify that he did not want to fight. And he went up and he showed his peace medal to them. And he said in English, he said, "Stop, stop, stop." But after he's seen that they wouldn't stop, he ran back and he composed the song. And it's a song that we still sing today at Cheyenne funerals. And the Cheyenne's words translate to, "Only the rocks live forever." At the camp at Sand Creek, it was mainly women and children and elderly. Mothers dug pits in the sand to try and bury their babies in hopes that they would survive. But the militiamen were told that they would take no prisoners and to shoot everyone point blank. So they fired cannons into these pits. The militiamen played games in killing babies, belongings taken and burned, and they butchered our people. There were over 200 killed, hundreds wounded, and only a few survivors. There were 2 militiamen that were very notable. Captain Silas Soule, and Lieutenant Joseph Kramer. They saw what was happening and they saw the nature of these killings, and they held their men back and they refused to fire. A lot of people believe that it wasn't for them. Perhaps the Cheyenne people wouldn't be here today. The Cheyenne and Arapaho people wouldn't be here today. So every year we thank them, because if it wasn't for them, us as descendants might not even be here. Captain Silas Soule and Lieutenant Joseph Kramer also wrote letters that told the truth of what exactly happened at that day at Sand Creek. They testified in court against John Chivington, and the Sand Creek Massacre was one of the most investigated events during the Civil War. It had 2 congressional hearings and 1 military hearing. Following Sand Creek, Governor Evans resigned because of the fallout that happened with the massacre. But Chivington said, "I stand by what happened at Sand Creek." But he also resigned so he couldn't be punished. About a year later, Silas Soule was also assassinated in the streets of Denver. Despite the court hearings and the testimonials gave by Silas Soule and Lieutenant Kramer, reparations were never paid by the government. And this also led to 1868 at the Battle of Washita, where Black Kettle was killed. And that's where we get introduced to General Custer and his 7th Cavalry. In 1887, there was the Dawes Act, and that forced Native people to have dependence on the US government. And during this time, there was a period known as the Cheyenne Exodus period, where Morningstar led his people back to the Rosebud area. In 1909, Sand Creek was referenced as a battle on a Civil War monument, which couldn't be any more wrong. In 1950, Sand Creek was designated as the battleground, or it was noted as a battleground. Despite all these efforts by the US government to prove that this was a notable battle, descendants of survivors knew how horrific it was, and they knew that it was no battle. We had no men there to fight. Like I said, the camp was mainly women, children, and elderly. And so that led us to a lot of tribal leaders and tribal elders wanting healing from Sand Creek and wanting this to be recognized as what it truly was, a massacre. In the year 2000, Sand Creek Massacre historical site was established on November 7th, 2000. And then once it was designated as a site, we started to pray there and begin our healing. And that led us to implement the spiritual healing run, where we run from the killing fields in Southwest Colorado to where Denver is today. It's a 180-mile run that we do that prays over the route taken, where the militiamen, we're bringing our body parts back to Denver to parade. So we run that route to bless it and to cleanse all the things that might have been left on that route. In 20, oh,
Sorry, going off of that, for us as Cheyenne people, this act was not just physical violence, it was a spiritual wound. Like many other indigenous cultures and communities, we believe that the body must be treated with care and respect after death so that the spirit is able to gone in peace. And whenever a body is harmed or desecrated in these ways, it's believed that those spirits aren't able to rest. And so the mutilations that occurred at Sand Creek meant that the souls of our relatives, they were not able to move. And that pain and that sorrow stayed with our people throughout the generations.
In 2014, the Colorado governor finally issued an apology and a proclamation. Oh, and rescinded the proclamation, or rescinded the order that deemed all Indians hostile in the state of Colorado. And there, in his apology, he also stated that Sand Creek was not supposed to happen and that they're sorry. In 2022, we finally got a site expansion, and we also got to repatriate victims. And we continue this history now today as the Youth Council, just to show that the Sand Creek story isn't over, and we are still working very hard on healing and to pay our respects to everyone that was lost and everything that was lost. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that difficult history. And I think ending with the reminder that part of the reason this program exists is one of the things that at Amache we felt very strongly about, with that theme of resettlement and repercussions into the future, is that the events in history were not just something that happened in the past, they continue to affect our communities going forward. And so this process of thinking through them, working through them, reflecting together, praying together is something that helps us all collectively. And so how we continue that moving forward. Oops. And so going into, again, the Youth Ambassador Program, Amache is much a newer site than Sand Creek National Historic Park, but it was designated in 2022, the bill was signed. And so soon after that, there was actually a ceremony at the Japanese American National Museum. They hosted an event to launch the Erecho, a sacred book of names that documents and remembers the over 125,000 people of Japanese descent incarcerated during World War II. So again, this process of continuing remembrance. And so in this image here, you can see that Amache was at the beginning of the procession, alphabetical order, but Minto Nai, who is an Amache survivor who was instrumental in those efforts to preserve Amache, he's leading the procession there in the wheelchair. And he spoke a little bit with Mitch Homa, our Amache Alliance president, thinking about, thoughts for the future. Now that Amache was authorized to become a Park Service site, what would be the next thing to focus on? And he really talked about this idea of collaboration with Sand Creek Massacre. It was something that I think the organizations had talked about a number of times in the past, but hadn't quite figured out how to make that come to fruition. And so that seemed like something that we could help commit to MIN to help kind of move that vision forward. And so we started exploring a potential collaboration with the Sand Creek Massacre Foundation. At the 2023 Amache Pilgrimage, we invited folks from the Sand Creek Massacre Foundation and community to join, and just, started that first pilgrimage exchange. You can see an article from the Colorado Sun that sort of documented that, and just then started brainstorming ideas for future collaborations. And then Annie Danis, who just recently had a baby, so she is not here with us today, but she was one of the crew chiefs from Denver University Amache Field School, and she's now an assistant professor of anthropology at Cal Poly Pomona. And so she really followed up with this idea of the Youth Ambassador Program and received an outdoor equity grant from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And that's what enabled this first pilot cohort to meet and to fund trips to both the Amache Pilgrimage and the Sand Creek Massacre Spiritual Healing Run, and starting to build these relationships and then sort of think about how the program might move forward. So we haven't yet secured funds for a second cohort, but that is in the works. We are kind of strategizing how to do that. And we're now in the process of documenting and evaluating sort of experiences so far as part of kind of thinking about how we want the program to develop. And so Mariko Rooks will now tell you a little bit more about the program activities to date, and then introduce the other youth ambassadors and hear their impressions and thoughts for the future.
Yes, so I'll go ahead and pick it up where Kristen left off. Thank you so much for your summary of our history, and to Aliana and Halcyon, as always, for sharing these really important stories that are really essential in understanding the land and our relationship to it as settlers and as forced sort of folks who were displaced into the Colorado area onto Cheyenne and Arapaho lands. So in terms of the Youth Ambassador Program, we have a really wonderful opportunity to actually venture out to all of these sites. None of us permanently live anywhere close to either site. The closest we get are our two college students who are in Denver right now, but we're actually able to go out together as a group. And in May of 2024 and of 2025, we participated in the annual Amache pilgrimage. So the image on the top left here is much of our cohort outside of the Amache Museum. The image in the center top is us receiving an award actually from the Colorado Lottery, who gave us our first initial grant. It's called the Starburst Award, and we were selected from many different grant recipients of the Colorado Lottery to receive this award for the work that had been done between these communities and at these two sites. And one of the really special things about the Amache pilgrimage is that, as sort of Kristen alluded to, the last day of the pilgrimage, which is Sunday, pilgrimage participants are welcome to actually venture over to Sand Creek. And so the Sunday morning programming for the Amache pilgrimage, which includes a lot of Japanese American descendants, is learning about the story of Sand Creek and listening to mostly Cheyenne elders talk about their experiences. And so one of the things that we have done year over year at this point has been to actually build and assemble a teepee on the site that is our program's teepee, and we actually now have that teepee for any other use that our program has. We were also able to put up the teepee this year at Amache during the pilgrimage and hold some of our programming in there, which was incredibly special and something that I'm very grateful that we were able to do. Also, you will never find team bonding like trying to put up these 8-foot tall poles with nothing but your hands and some well coordinated timing. So we're really grateful that we've been able to do that. The second cornerstone of programming for the youth ambassadors is going out to Sand Creek and experiencing and participating in the spiritual healing run that Aliana and Kristen have both talked about, at least briefly. And so, as mentioned, this is a 180-mile run from the Sand Creek Massacre site into Denver, and it follows the path that was taken by the soldiers after the massacre, wherein a lot of them carried body parts as souvenirs and trophies, many of which made their way across the country and had to eventually be rematriated to the site later. And so this is a really special experience. I think as a Japanese American descendant, it's not lost on me that this is the journey that our ancestors were unable to make after they were deposited in Denver by the federal government, that this is sort of for us in reverse, like a homecoming or a homegoing that is, I think, also really healing for our community. It also just gives us a really unique immersion into Cheyenne and Arapaho culture. So you are with your cohort of runners, and it's a relay run 24 hours a day for a total of 4 days. And you spend a lot of time out in the High Plains area. You spend a lot of time in ceremony. You spend a lot of time learning not just what happened, but also different healing methodologies for how to process and grieve sort of what happened at the site and to folks' ancestors. And that run ends with a stop at Silas Sewell's gravestone. So again, Sewell is the commander who refused to fire and who testified that the massacre occurred to Congress and was later assassinated. We also run past the site of his assassination in downtown Denver, and we end the run on the steps of the Denver Capitol. So we spend most of the last day running through Denver, which I also think is a really important experience in making just folks aware that this is what's happening and whose land that they are on. And so we've now completed a full circuit of 2 pilgrimages and 2 healing runs, the last of which was only a couple of weeks ago. And it has been just a really incredible experience to, I think, build this program from the start onwards. So I don't want to say too much because you'll get to hear from all of our ambassadors in these coming slides. So what we'll do next is I'll go ahead, and if Kirsten, you could hit the slide transition. Our next two components of this is that we'll introduce all of our ambassadors. We'll talk about their specific and family connections to the sites, and they'll share a little bit about how they ended up involved in this program and sort of what the program means to them. After that, we'll have a quick roundtable discussion where they talk about their experiences so far and how this program has been a stepping stone or a jumping off point for continuing to expand and engage their involvement in communities, in site-based history, and in their own sort of identity formation as youth and young adults. So I'll actually go ahead and go first if we can hit my slide. As mentioned, my name is Mariko Fujimoto Rooks. I am one of the community educators on the Amache side of this program. We also have community educators who are Southern and Northern Cheyenne as well, though they could not be here today. I am an Amache descendant. My grandfather, who you'll see in this top picture here with my mom, my maternal grandfather, Ted Yoshito Fujimoto, and his family were all incarcerated at Amache. My grandfather was just graduated from high school, and instead of going to college, he went to prison camp. And so he and his siblings and his father lived in Barrack 11, in block 11E, which we have a little photo of what that block looks like today. And my grandfather ended up working, receiving a work permit to work on multiple farms and to even apparently chauffeur people around in the Colorado area. And then did some radio technician schooling in Chicago before he was drafted into the 442nd Regional Combat Unit, which was the all Japanese American combat unit that was required to serve in the US military during World War II. Something unique for me about this site is that I am also a Black American descendant of enslaved peoples in the United States, and my father's family was stationed very close to Amache in Fort Riley, Kansas. So I think I definitely hold a lot of very complex and weighted feelings about the impact of military violence on both sides of my family and how land, forced displacement, and settler colonialism have impacted all of my ancestors who ended up at these sites. And while I talk a lot about the meaningfulness of the actual location of the Amache incarceration camp now, I actually did not visit this site until I was a sophomore in college, or a first year in college, which was actually around the time that my grandfather himself was incarcerated. I grew up in Los Angeles and was very active and still am pretty active in the Little Tokyo community. I do a lot of traditional dance. I am a Bonodori leader for Senjin Buddhist Temple. So you'll see the pictures on the bottom are some of the performances and some of the community dance teaching that I've been able to do in the past couple of years. And I very much grew up understanding and knowing the stories of the camps, thanks to a lot of the work done by the Nisei and Sansei to educate us and to make sure that we did not forget what happened and to understand that our histories are deeply important in informing our current sort of social political climate and our history, particularly post 9/11 and currently during ICE deportations and other sort of raids and arrests of other folks who are deemed to be foreign or un-American. And so that was something I knew and held dear. And I knew that my grandfather had been incarcerated, but I had no real conception of what that meant in a sort of physical or place-based way. I'd made a trip to Manzanar, but even then I could sort of tell, this wasn't actually our experience, right? Some of the few stories I did hear from my grandfather and my great aunts and uncles sounded a little bit different than some of the things that I had learned about or had visited in person. And so I was really interested coming out of college to have a more embodied experience of our family's story and to be able, now that I was no longer a broke college student, to potentially invest the time and energy in being able to go out to the site and to learn more about it. And so I actually joined the program because I saw a flyer for the first Youth Ambassador cohort as my mom was preparing for the 2024 Amache pilgrimage. And I kind of invited myself along and said, hey, they're willing to facilitate our transport out here. And I reached out to Annie, who was the originator of the program, And when I talked a little bit more about my background in youth education and in Japanese American youth leadership spaces, she actually asked if I would be interested in designing some of the curriculum and providing some of the background history for the site and for incarceration in general. And so I feel like it's been a really interesting experience so far to somewhat transition from being a youth participant into thinking about what does it mean to guide and shape some of the programming for this cohort. And I'm really grateful to everyone for letting me figure it out, as we all are figuring it out as part of this. And I feel just really fortunate to be part of the program. And I think the last thing I'll say here in this introduction is that I cannot overstate or overemphasize the importance and significance of actually being able to do this on the land in which on which my ancestors were incarcerated. I think it makes it an entirely different experience. And I think that being able to engage in connection with the rightful stewards of that land and to understand the history of the land and how our ancestors ended up there feels like an incredibly important and vital part of that understanding and of that healing. I think it's always really important to recognize that there would have been no space for this camp if not for the Sand Creek Massacre and for its removal of Cheyenne and Arapaho peoples, and also because the majority or a lot of the folks that were in the War Relocation Authority or the WRA who set up the incarceration camps had a lot of experience doing that because they were pulled from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where they specialized in forcing folks onto reservations. And so I think really understanding and sitting with that history is incredibly important and is something that is really unique about being able to be actually on site for all of these programs instead of learning about them from the comfort of Los Angeles. So I'm really excited to welcome y'all into this space, and I am even more excited to introduce our youth ambassadors who are here to share with us today. Our original cohort had about 10 or 11 folks, and today we have 4 people who will be sharing their and their family stories. So without further ado, very excited to turn it over to Mauricio and Grandma Rosalie Tallbull, who are going to share their story and talk about some of the work that they've done both on site at the Sand Creek Massacre and also throughout the state of Colorado.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mauricio Osino. This is Rosalie Tolbull, my grandmother. We're both members of the Cheyenne tribe, and mainly the way we got involved with the Amache Alliance and the Sand Creek Youth Ambassador Program was mainly through our relation to Amache or Amiatsit, and pretty much my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother is Louise Lone Bear. Louise Lone Bear. And I only recently learned about this. But with help from my grandmother, I was able to learn about the history, learn more about the story behind both of these sites, and just get involved with my community a bit more. And I still have a long way to go, but um, one of the biggest honors that I ever had, uh, by far, other than being a part of the Amache Alliance, was getting to talk to the Denver City Council on naming the first urban park after a Native American, and that was Amache Powers National Memorial Park. We spoke with the City Council. It was very it was a very different experience. It's not every day you get to talk with the City Council, and it was very eye-opening, but also getting to tell the story of the Amache Alliance with the City Council, and also getting to share what insight that we have was just really well, just a way to push forward what we do here. So yeah, my grandmother, if she wants to say anything.
I'd just like to say that I'm a big supporter, and I am just so proud of our youth who have participated in this program for the past few years. I see the growth in Aliana and Halcyon and Mauricio, who are here, but also for other youth. It's just been an eye-opening experience, and I'm just so proud of all of the youth. They really, really get involved. It's very time consuming, but listening today is very painful. It's just um, very, very painful. And our it's a history that we keep we live with, and we keep um, talking about it because that's a way of healing. And we need to do that for our youth, for our future history, because normally our tribe, the Cheyenne tribe, is very quiet, laid back, and we handle affairs in a quiet manner. And to hear these youth speak their voices is I'm very proud and honored. But I have to say that I'm very supportive of all of them. But it was such an eye opener to see my grandson Mauricio testify to the Denver City Council. And that is very, very huge. It was his first experience, and he did so awesome, so well, that I'm so proud of him. And we are continuing. Just recently, the last few days, we got a personal invitation to attend a thank you, um, to attend a special, I don't know how I'd say it, just an evening with the community to show their honor for people that are involved and things like that. And I do have to say that after our testimony to the, I'll say Mauricio's testimony to the Denver City Council, it was passed unanimously. And they have been having meetings on that for some time, but to be a part of that is something that will live with us and our people forever. And this park is the first, like Mauricio said, the first park across the country that is named after a Native woman. And Mauricio and our family are direct descendants of that. And we show our honor by participating, being part of our community. And that's what I am so proud of. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for telling us a little bit about your experience and your story. If you're interested in watching that city council testimony, we'll have the links sent around after this panel. One thing that we maybe should have made a slide about is about the sort of actual name Amache, which is a Japanese transliteration of Amache, who is, as folks have mentioned or alluded to, was a very important and influential Cheyenne leader who was very critical in brokering a lot of like peace and trade and also I would argue like cross-cultural communication within the region. Halcyon will also talk a little bit about her, but there's some like really deep implications about what it means, I think, for us as Amache camp descendants to meet with the descendants of the actual person for whom our camp was named, and to learn more about her history and to honor the fact that that history is still living. You'll also see that we did get a chance to hear from Grandma today. One of the greatest parts about this program has been that we have multiple generations of youth and their families that will attend these pilgrimages, that will ride along in the van with us during the healing run. And so being able to hear the stories of elders who are not far removed from or are survivors of this history themselves is a really important part of the program that we're really lucky to have on both sides of the program. And so thank you as always for being here and for sharing your stories and for your support. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to our next ambassador, who I believe is Eliana.
Hello, I apologize for not introducing myself earlier, but Pivot ish Evamel not Hishive. My name is Aliana Brady. My Cheyenne name is Evamel, which roughly translates to making trails woman. And I'm a direct descendant of Histuttonowese, braided locks. He's in the on the top right picture, he's on the left. So that's braided locks, and his wife, Ellen, braided hair. Like I said, braided locks was a survivor of the Sand Creek Massacre, but not only that, he was a victim of the boarding schools, and from there, his name was Americanized, and he got given a first name, which was Arthur, and his last name or his actual Cheyenne name translation for it in English was Braided Locks, but that got shortened to Brady, and so that's where you get my last name, Brady. So yeah, like I said, that's Arthur and Ellen Braided Hair, my great 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 grandparents. And then down on the left, bottom left, we have my grandfather's, let's see, second from left. That's Otto Braided Hair Jr. And then the next one is Steve Brady Sr. That's my actual grandpa. I guess you could call Otto, um some refer to him some would refer to him as like my great uncle, but Native way, Cheyenne way, um, they're all my grandpas, so that's how I refer to him as. And then right next to, so it goes Otto, Steve, and then the white guy you see standing next to them is Dr. David Hollis. And all of them in that picture have just been very influential in not only um, uh, learning and preserving the history of the Cheyenne and Arapaho people, but they also were very prominent in making the Sand Creek Massacre site a National Historic Site and have it designated and protected. Um, and so that's kind of one of the things they instilled in me is to keep learning the history, keep sharing the history, and like some of the um, like one of the biggest things they say is don't forget where you come from. And so that's kind of like they're kind of like my main drive when I am in positions like this. So yeah. And then the next picture over is me during the spiritual healing run. A couple years ago, I would say like 2018, 2019. And then the one on the bottom right is actually a couple weeks ago at the spiritual healing run this past year with all my family and all the Northern Cheyennes that were able to make it down. Yeah, but how I really got connected to the Amache and Sand Creek Youth Ambassador Program was actually through my grandpa Otto. He called me up and he was like, "Hey, they're looking for people to come join this thing. Are you able to make it this day?" And I didn't really know what it was, but I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "I'm free." I was like, "I should be able to make it out there." And then I was getting calls from Annie asking me if I knew what I was signing up for, and I was like, kinda. I was like, I kind of know where I'm going. I was like, I know, I know I'm supposed to represent my ancestors. So I'm like happy to do that whenever. And then, yeah, I didn't know that it was going to be this huge program and this huge, um, I would say foundation or like this huge like moment in my life that would be um, so like influential for me. And I really learned a lot from um, not only like my own leaders, but also from the Amache side as well. And I think it just made me realize that not all of us are so different. Although we may come from different backgrounds, like we share same histories in that the US government tried to force us out of here and tried to displace us and didn't, sorry, I apologize. They didn't want us to be here. But yeah, I'm very thankful for this program and I'm thankful for all the connections I made and I'm, you know, uh, ready to continue moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I'll go ahead and turn it over to, I think Halcyon is next. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Halson Levi. I also apologize for not being able to introduce myself earlier. My Cheyenne name is Omiwashtits, and that means walks within the wind woman. And for me to walk with the wind, walking with the wind represents being able to take what all the challenges that life presents with you and moving forward and continuing forward. And I feel like that's especially relevant with a program like this. I'm a direct descendant of the Sand Creek Massacre on both sides of my family, both through my mother and both through my father. I descend from multiple people who were at Sand Creek and who were also engaged in the events building up and following Sand Creek. Some of these relatives of mine include Big Head, Little Rock, Chief Bear Robe, Kiowa Woman, Hippie Far Killer, Owl Woman, and her son George Bent, who was one of the more prominent people who had recorded the atrocities that happened at Sand Creek, and many others who were not able to be mentioned. But being part of a program like this has really just helped me to see like how interconnected our histories are and how these connections, how they still shape us today. It's helped me work through the grief and sadness I've carried for relatives, because for me, part of the struggle when coming or descending from an event like this is I tend to think about how, like, one of the things is I think about relatives that I still would have had today had these events not. Very grateful to have come from a household where I learned this history at a young age, and my family never shied away from telling the truth about what had happened or teaching me from where I came from. But even though as I grew up with that knowledge, I still carried a lot of that grief and a lot of that sadness with it, especially as I started to understand the depth of what our people had went through. There was a time, multiple times, whenever the weight of those stories, they often felt too heavy to hold, especially in going to school here in Denver. There are reminders from street names to monuments of the people that had committed these atrocities all throughout. And that's something that's also shared throughout many communities, not just our own communities, of the memorialization and dedications of people who have wronged our communities historically. This journey, this program has been healing for me. For a long time, visiting the Sand Creek site, it brought a lot of pain and it brought a lot of emotion. But it was actually last year when I was able to stand at the site with the Amache descendants and with the other youth ambassadors, and I was able to stand there and not cry for the first time. For me, this program, it showed just how far I have come in my own healing and how far others have as well, especially how much strength there is in our stories. Speaking about these histories, it's also become a win too, because every time we talk about Sand Creek or every time we talk about these historical events, we're just saying the names of our relatives out loud. We're bringing their memory forward and making sure that their stories aren't lost. It's a way of honoring them, not just in sadness, but in love, pride as well. Sharing these truths, it reminds people that we're still here and that we're still carrying these connections and that we're still carrying our culture and we're still building something for those who will come after us. That's why the youth are so important. That's why these programs are so important, because the youth, we're the ones who will continue these stories and we're the ones who will carry these teachings and protect them. Whenever young people, well, just people of all ages really, whenever we learn about where we came from, it gives us the strength and it gives us direction to move. Reminds us that healing, it doesn't just belong in the past. And I've seen how much power there is in just us coming together as youth, and just us together in communities and learning our histories and finding ways of turning these events into purpose. All of the people that I've interacted with through this program, I'm just so amazed at just the drive that these people have and want to carry forward these histories. But Naosh, thank you.
Thank you, Halcyon. And we'll go ahead and close it out today with Aya, who is the other Amache incarceration camp survivor on this call.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aya Sakura. Thank you all for being here on this Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I just have a few pictures here. Mostly, I wanted to talk about my grandma. So I am a direct descendant of Amache incarcerees on my father's side of my family. So um, both of his parents, both my grandparents, and all of their very large extended families were incarcerated at Amache, and then I think some extended family was at Topaz and also Jerome in Arkansas. Um, and they came from really big families. My grandma, she's this is her and her two older sisters at camp. This picture gets me every time. She's just so cute and smiley. But she and her family um, were, her father was one of, I believe, 11 children. And they're part of a huge farming family who kind of sharecropped in the Central Valley in California. And then once the war broke out and they were at first relocated to Merced, where they spent 5 months at an assembly center there, and then they were put on a train and went to Colorado, where none of them had ever been before, and then spent the rest of the time there at Amache. And my grandma is really, although I had, extended family on all of my dad's side, my grandma is really the one person who sticks out to me as the one who really told this story and passed that on to me. Um, she was, I believe, 2 years old when she arrived at camp, and she came home when she was 5. Um, and she has kind of hazy memories of the time. And even she was telling me in her childhood, it was not really talked about in their family. Her parents were focused on moving forward, trying to get back their land, trying to reestablish their farm, trying to make sure their children got an education, got jobs, and were successful as they were trying to re-enter society after this um, kind of great challenge, and I would say maybe a bit of humiliation. And she kind of heard her aunts and uncles. She had so many aunts and uncles, her own parents talking about their time at camp, and she kind of thought they were just talking about summer camp or something like that. And she didn't learn until later in her life, kind of the reality of the experience that her family had gone through and that she had gone through as a child. Um, and once she kind of learned this, she made sure that me, as her granddaughter, kind of knew about this history from my young age, and didn't have any confusion about what it meant when I heard that my family was in camp. Like, it was not summer camp, it was incarceration. And I was kind of going through my camera roll. I found an old picture of me. I think I'm in 2nd grade or so, and I had a school assignment to talk to a family member about how their life was growing up. And I remember my grandma telling me about this experience. I think she's just kind of an endlessly positive person, and as a great storyteller. And because she was so young in camp, I think some of her memories are like, oh, playing in the snow for the first time, or um, remembering getting to like hang out with her grandma way more because they all lived in this one room. Um, and so she's able to share kind of, I think, a very honest perspective as of being such a young child in an environment where you might not even understand exactly what's going on. And then it's been interesting for me now, especially as I come into my own adulthood and I'm thinking about, um, you know, maybe having children of my own someday, and trying to just find my purpose in general and my path in life, of remembering that, I have so many powerful ancestors in my bloodline who have come before me, and that it's also, my responsibility to, as my co ambassadors have shared, kind of remember, um, hold the torch, and be able to pass it forward. Um, this kind of picture where we're stamping, this is the Ireicho that was brought to the Amache pilgrimage last year. And my grandma, I was able to travel with her to Amache, and that was her first time returning to the site since she had left in 1945 as a 5-year-old. And it just really felt very special to um, be there with her, and for her also to learn more about the stories from Sand Creek descendants, and for her also to be at Sand Creek. And I know she and Grandma Rosalie got to spend some time together. And just, I think that, as someone who had an angsty phase in my adolescence, I think it's really easy to feel alone in things that are painful to you, and maybe some of how a lot of us were raised in Japanese and Japanese American community to kind of be tough, and this concept of like gaman, hold it together, keep it moving, get stuff done, and I think that inner strength is super important. And also, I know that you never walk alone. And this whole experience and exchanging stories with Sand Creek descendants, other young people, um, other descendants of Amache incarcerees, hearing where everyone's families are coming from, what's their history, what they're doing now, how they're carrying all of this. There are so many beautiful connections. And also just so many shared experiences, and all of us trying to hold on to kind of complicated questions and things that don't tensions, things that maybe don't fit together. And it was really awesome and healing to be around real people who are thinking about the same stuff, who are feeling the same stuff, and kind of in these, you might not think, from just off of, you might not think that there's a connection, but then we didn't even have to dig super far to realize like what connections that we have, and reminding myself that really, that healing is ongoing. So many, we're only here because so many people put in that work, and people survived, and people shared those stories, and are letting us know and connecting us, and trying to kind of rise to the occasion of being the ones to tell that story in the future, and to keep it moving ourselves. I am rambling a little now.
No,
But
thank you so much.
shout out to my grandma. Oh, her name is Mabel Kaoru Morimoto Sugiura. And I just want to say thank you to my grandma and all grandmas everywhere, honestly.
And actually, that's a really great note to end it on. I'm going to be mindful about time here as we move into just a quick discussion. And while we talk about our experience so far in the program, feel free, folks who are here, to leave questions in the Q&A. We'll have some time to answer those as well. So I think, Aya really touched on this idea of, and everyone has touched on this idea of, what does it mean to carry on and represent our ancestors? And one of our Cheyenne community educators also asked us, as we moved through this program, what does it mean for us to be good ancestors as well, right? And so a lot of our approach, since that question has been asked, I think especially for this group, has been thinking through our participation in this program and what it's led to in that lens. And so with that, I wanted to ask folks, I think we've heard some really important reflections about what this program has meant to you, and how it's helped you to grow, but maybe to share some of the things that have that this program has inspired you to do, because I think a really important part of this in our program design and build is that it's sustainable, and that you don't just sort of go on like a vacation exchange trip and come back and that's it, right? But that this leads into sort of further personal and community growth. And a lot of folks on this call have some really exciting projects and opportunities that they've been building. And so I wanted to open up the floor to sort of reflect on, yeah, like what are you up to now? And how has this program really encouraged that? And again, while they do that, feel free to add any additional questions you might have in the chat, and I'll feed those afterwards. Do you want to talk about the youth board or the kanji project?
I guess I'll start us off. So in 2024, both me and Aliana Brady, we co-founded the Sand Creek Massacre Foundation's first youth council. And what this youth council is, it's a way of giving Sand Creek Massacre descendants and others in the community an opportunity to share their histories and an opportunity to share their perspectives, especially because, like what we mentioned, is youth, especially Native American communities, our youth is really up to them. There's so much importance in having these perspectives. But yeah, so that's currently a brand new project, and what we plan on doing is we plan on doing hopefully hopefully, once we get funds to have another cohort for the Sand Creek Amache program, we hope of facilitating kind of like a pipeline, almost like having those who are youth council being able to participate in future programs with the Amache descendants. But yeah, Aliana, if you have anything else you'd like to say about the youth council.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Yeah, the youth council is I think very important to us because not a lot of youth from our communities get these opportunities to be in these spaces and to talk like this and to educate. And we just thought that was really important to not only include them, but to build a kind of stepping stone into not only working with the foundation and other organizations, but also into life, you know. This gives us a lot of experience and it opens our eyes and realizes that we're not all so different. Yeah, some more things that I'm involved in. Yeah, I'm a really big dancer, so I've been trying to get like some dance and stuff going through our youth ambassador program. So I'm super excited to see how that turns out. Yeah.
Yeah, I can touch on that project a little bit more. So one of the real highlights of our program has been discovering that we have cultural dancers on both sides. And so, and that all of us do some sort of like circular folk dancing. And so a big highlight of any space where we end up together is getting to do some cultural dancing, often with live drumming. To connect with each other, to learn more about each other. And it's been a really, really cool experience. And so one of the things that I was really interested in when Amache was named as a historic site was to see if it would be possible to do any kinds of artist in residency programs, as a lot of the national parks have throughout the country, and whether it was officially NPS affiliated or just a new way to connect with the site and to create and heal through connection to the land. That was something that I was really interested in, and we're excited to start that process and build that out. And so Aliana and I have gotten the really wonderful opportunity to work together and start to imagine what that could look like. The current dream, fingers crossed, is to bring some sort of obon back to the Amache site as it was danced in World War II, and to also use this as a really useful educational opportunity for everyone from the high school volunteers, the incredible service program that maintain the site and give tours year round, to other youth in our communities that maybe don't have the chance to go on site and learn about these shared histories. So it's something that's really new and in progress, but we're really excited about. Aya, would you mind talking a little bit about the kanji project as well?
Yeah, of course. Kind of in the same theme of all these connections that we're finding, one really shockingly direct connection, it comes from kind of the naming of the incarceration camp of Amache, which, as Mariko said, is a Japanese transliteration of the first name of Amache Prowers, who was a Cheyenne woman, correct me if I'm wrong, who was super influential in the area. And Prowers County, which is in that area, is named for her husband's family, I guess. But it's literally this woman's name, and it's also a name that camp survivors and incarcerees are very familiar with. And we're trying to find new ways of honoring the person, the woman of Amache, and also understanding the significance of Amache as a name that camp incarcerees kind of renamed that site and kind of self-proclaimed that site, not as Granada Relocation Center, but kind of came up with their own name. And they also kind of came up with these kanji characters to create kind of a Japanese word for Amache, which kind of translated to Asian town. And so we were thinking of a project where we can honor Amache, who's, a really influential ancestor in this story and in this region, and to find kanji characters in Japanese. Kanji are characters that kind of encompass meaning within them. And so we've actually found some really beautiful characters where we might be able to write Amache's name in the Cheyenne pronunciation with Japanese kanji characters and imbue some of that meaning on honoring her as an ancestor who really paved the way, spoke out, and really shined her light so that all of us could meet here in this fateful way. And to also, make sure that our two communities can kind of see that connection. I think there's a lot of power in a name, and how we treat that name and how we bring meaning to that name is super important. So that's a really also kind of a new and emerging project to kind of combine meaning and words and names. So yeah.
Yes. And I think important to mention in that is that when NPS or other affiliated folks give tours and they mention Ameotsu, they often pronounce it Amachi. And so making sure that there are appropriate pronunciation guides and clear explanations on things like NPS websites and in museum sites so that everyone can learn the correct pronunciation and everyone can understand the importance of the name, and that we as survivors of the camp are making sure to lead that conversation, given often I think Japanese and Japanese Americans like role in sort of both perpetuating but also contesting, right, the process of settler colonialism as a whole. And so, it's a project we're really excited about. Lastly, Mo, you are our youngest ambassador on the call. You're still in high school. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of how this program has sort of really shaped or like given you ideas for what's happening now and what's happening next? Of course, city council testimony and the building and shepherding of an entire park in Denver where you live is super incredible. But if there's anything else you want to share or talk about as you're sort of moving through and deciding what life is looking like for you right now.
There's not too much going on from on our end. We're just waiting for that next pilgrimage and decided to go. But we just been doing stuff around the community, you know. We're really involved with the local Denver Indian Center. We've been attending unity meetings over there and just bringing together the local youth and trying to get youth connected with their roots and also making changes with the community itself. And I want to say that this program has really pushed me to go for these kinds of opportunities. So I guess that's thank you all for that. And but it's really cool just to see that like with native people and urbanization, it's kind of hard to feel like you fit in as an urban native, but you can still make changes, and that's what we do at Unity at the Denver Indian Center. Is that you just we work on movements that are going on, and even like local voting stuff like that, and stuff that goes on with the local school districts, and just trying to get interconnectedness and trying to network. That's the biggest thing right now is just networking, trying to get connected with other people. But other than that, just been sitting around, not doing much.
I don't know, that sounds like kind of a lot besides just sitting around. And it's incredible that you're able to engage with youth, local youth in your community to be able to continue the work that maybe started a little bit here. Kristen, maybe I'll turn it back over to you to throw up our last few slides. Folks, if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, we're going to sort of start moving into our closing here. So I'll go ahead and talk through just some of our resources that we want to offer as an end to this presentation. So the first is if you're interested in any of the things that we've talked about, the Youth Ambassador Program, the Amache Alliance, the Sand Creek Massacre Foundation, we have a wonderful link tree here that if you either scan this code on your phone with your camera, or if you just go to the website link itself after this panel, you'll be able to find a nice consolidated list of lots of different resources. So everything from background around both of these sites to some of the existing friends groups and movements that are continuing to make everything happen. You'll also find a little bit about some of the press and program background. We were fortunate to have like an NPR story that aired last year, so that was super cool. So feel free to go to that. It should be hopefully a one-stop shop for all of the things that you might need if you're interested in learning more about the program. Our next slide is also, if you are interested in keeping in touch, please feel free to fill out our interest form. We're trying to create a little bit of a mailing list, not that we need to subscribe to any more mailing lists, but if you know someone who might be interested in being part of an upcoming cohort, if you're interested in some of the activities and events that we are doing and creating, this is a great way to collect folks' contact information. We do want to emphasize that per this ongoing conversation about funding, particularly under this federal administration, we don't have a set start date yet for a new cohort, but we are working towards that. And so to that end, the most direct way you could help the program is on our next slide, which is through donating. And so we would really, really love it if you and folks that you know and care about would consider donating, especially during this particular month, during what most folks will celebrate as Thanksgiving is actually the week and almost to the day of the Sand Creek Massacre itself. So as you think about sort of giving this holiday season, this would be a really great place to do that. Kirsten, do you want to talk a little bit about the donation links and forms and how they get to donate?
Sure, a little bit of just sort of the specifics. The link that we put on the page, Amache Alliance/donate, will take you to a page that looks a little different from this one, but it has options. If you click on the PayPal, it will take you to what's shown on the screen. And you can just select Amache Alliance projects as one of the drop downs, and then write, as you kind of sign out, write in the notes that you'd like to support the Youth Ambassador Program. And then on that main page, there's also the information if you're interested in sending in a check. And in the check, you can just write the same in the memo notes. It tells you what to put for Amache Alliance projects, and you can just flag that for Youth Ambassador programs as well.
Yes, and please do consider doing this or sending this around if this presentation has been interesting to you. Next year will be the 50th anniversary of the first Amache pilgrimage and also the 25th anniversary of the spiritual healing run. So being able to keep this programming going for some really important events, I think, for both of our communities is something that we would greatly appreciate. So thank you so much. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat and we're almost at time. So I wanted to turn it over to Aya to close us out the way we often close out our programming together as a group. Feel free, also these are emails here that will also be in the slides if you are interested in contacting us directly with specific questions. So Aya, I'll turn it over to you to talk about our closing, and we invite you wherever you are to engage in our program closing with us.
Yay, thank you, Mariko. Yeah, we like to thank you to Aliana for opening us with the beautiful prayer. And I'd like to close us out with we like to do a little clapping sequence and to kind of share a word, kind of an intention or a reflection as we kind of break, get back to our individual lives. So the sequence is very simple. It's kind of 3 sets of 3 claps. So I can demonstrate it really quick, and we'll repeat that sequence twice, and then we'll say a word, and I'll share the word in a minute. But just for the claps, it'll sound like this. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 1. And we'll repeat that 3, 3, 3, 1 sequence 2 times. And then after that, I was thinking a little bit about a Japanese word that might reflect what I've been reflecting on, and I came up with a character / concept of en. Should have written this somewhere. I can drop it in the chat. But kind of a phrase I was thinking of is goen ni kansha, which we're not going to say that whole thing. But en is this idea, kind of like fate or serendipity, I would say. There's kind of a Buddhist idea that things that are meant to be are connected by this long invisible red thread, and that connection is only, it's not always revealed immediately, but if you're connected by that thread, you're going to find each other eventually. And I kind of feel that way about this program, where so many worlds and lives and factors came together, and somehow I'm just really grateful that I'm experiencing this moment, and we've kind of arrived at certain moments where that connection is making itself clear. So if we just do this clapping sequence, and we can all kind of say "eng" or "goeng," and kind of that holding gratitude and awareness of all the forces that be that brought us together. I would really appreciate that. Yeah, is everyone okay? It's "eng," so like. Actually, we could say goen to kind of honor it a little more. So I'll put it in the chat. If you could just say go, like G-O, and then en, like E-N, goen. Okay, is everyone okay with the clapping? Are we ready to? Okay, so ready and again. Goen. Thank you guys so much.
Sorry, that sounds a little better when we are not on Zoom, but
Yeah.
thank you to everyone for participating and for engaging with our panel today. Again, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if there are other folks that might be interested in the program, and if you're interested in supporting any of our work.